Peace be with you, this is Ivan, the talkative uncle. Today, we'll be discussing the second lecture on the Second Temple period, exploring a crucial biblical historical timeframe, the period from Persian rule to the Roman conquest. Spanning approximately 500 years, this time witnessed the Jewish people's journey from captivity and return, to the rebuilding of the temple, to the impact of Hellenism, the Maccabean Revolt, and ultimately, the loss of their independence. This history not only shaped the political and religious backdrop of the New Testament era, but also reveals how God reigns supreme amidst the waves of history, preparing for the completion of His plan of salvation. Let's explore this pivotal period of history together. In 539 BC, the Persian Empire conquered Babylon. The following year, Cyrus the Great, the Persian king, issued a decree allowing the exiled Jews to return to their homeland and rebuild the temple. This decree is recorded in Ezra 1 verses 1 to 4 and 2 Chronicles 36 verses 22 to 23. The authenticity of Cyrus's decree is debated among scholars. The Cyrus Cylinder, an ancient document, records Cyrus's policy of allowing exiled peoples to return home and rebuild the temple, but it specifically mentions Babylon and Mesopotamia, without directly mentioning Judah or Jerusalem. Scholar Lester L. Grab argues that while the so-called Cyrus's decree cannot be considered entirely consistent with the biblical description, it does represent a general policy allowing exiles to return and rebuild places of worship. Archaeological evidence suggests that the return was not a large-scale, single event as described in the Bible, but rather a gradual process that lasted for decades. The first group of returnees, led by Zerubbabel, a descendant of David, and high priest Joshua, likely numbered far fewer than the tens of thousands recorded in the Bible. The reconstruction of the temple stalled in the early years of the return of the Mongols, only resuming around 520 BC under the inspiration of the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, and was completed in 516 BC. The Second Temple differed significantly from Solomon's First Temple. Physically, the Second Temple was smaller in scale, and due to resource scarcity, its decorations were far less elaborate than those of the First Temple. Solomon's 10 lampstands were replaced by a single 7-cash candlestick. But the most fundamental difference lay theologically. The Ark of the Covenant was lost during the exile, never recovered, and no new ark was ever made. This left the Holy of Holies in the Second Temple empty. The ark was a physical symbol of God's presence on earth. Its absence signified a fundamental shift in the traditional way of divine presence, forcing the Jews to seek new ways to address the issues of sin and holiness. Ezra 3 verses 12 to 13 records that when the foundation of the temple was laid, but many priests, Levites, and elders, who had seen the old temple, now saw with their own eyes the foundation of this temple, and they cried out loudly. This reflects the simplicity of the Second Temple compared to the First Temple. Around 458 BC, Ezra was authorized by the Persian king to enforce the law, promote religious reform, and emphasize the study of the law. He opposed intermarriage with Gentiles and required married men to divorce their Gentile wives, as recorded in Ezra chapters 9 and 10. Ezra promoted the central role of the law in communal life. Around 445 BC, Nehemiah was appointed governor of Judah by the Persian king and led the reconstruction of the Jerusalem walls, completing it in just 52 days, as recorded in Nehemiah 6 verse 15. Nehemiah promoted socio-economic reforms, opposed usury, and collaborated with Ezra to promote religious revival. Under Persian rule, Judah, as a small province, practiced a form of theocratic politics. The high priest became the main leader of the community, and the governor, appointed by Persia and usually Jewish, was responsible for maintaining order and collecting taxes. At that time, the population of Judah was about 30,000, while Jerusalem and the surrounding area had only about 3,000. The province suffered economic hardship, lacked resources, and relied heavily on agriculture. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, ushering in the Hellenistic era for Judah. Alexander himself was relatively tolerant of the Jews, but as conquests initiated a long period of interaction and conflict between Jewish and Greek cultures. After Alexander's death, his generals divided the empire. Judah initially fell under the control of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt. Ptolemaic rule was relatively stable and tolerant, allowing Jews to maintain autonomy and religious freedom, promoting trade, and leading to the Hellenization of the Jewish elite. During this period, around the 3rd century BC, the Hebrew Bible began to be translated into Greek, resulting in the famous Septuagint. The Tobias family was a significantly Hellenized Jewish noble family, wielding considerable political and economic influence. In 198 BC, Antiochus III of the Seleucid dynasty defeated the Ptolemaic dynasty at the Battle of Caesarea, and Judah came under Seleucid control. Antiochus III initially respected Jewish traditions, even issuing edicts to protect the temple and Jewish customs. However, the situation deteriorated sharply during the reign of Antiochus IV. Antiochus IV, nicknamed Epiphanes, meaning the illustrious, likely adopted a radical Hellenistic policy towards the Jews due to his defeat in the war against the Ptolemaic dynasty, his subsequent obstruction by Rome, and internal power struggles, particularly over the position of high priest. Between 168 and 167 BC, he implemented a series of persecutions, the looting of the temple, plundering its valuables, including the 7,000 candlesticks, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense. On the 15th of December 167 BC, the 25th of Chislev, he erected profane objects that would cause desolation on the temple altar, possibly an altar or statue of Zeus. He prohibited Jewish traditions such as circumcision, Sabbath observance, and dietary laws. He forced the worship of Greek gods and ordered sacrifices to be offered to them, and he destroyed the law, burning or tearing up the Mosaic law. These measures triggered an unprecedented crisis among the Jews and directly led to the Maccabean Revolt. In 167 BC, the priest Mattathias refused to offer sacrifices to the Greek gods at Modian, killed a Jewish man preparing to sacrifice and a Seleucid official, and then fled into the wilderness with his sons, beginning a guerrilla war. Mattathias cried out, "Follow me, all you who are zealous for the law and uphold the covenant." This is recorded in 1 Maccabees 2:27. After Mattathias' death, his son Judah took over leadership. Judah was nicknamed Maccabees, meaning hammer, reflecting his bravery in battle. Using guerrilla tactics, Judah defeated several Seleucid armies while Antiochus IV was preoccupied with wars in the east. In 164 BC, Judah Maccabees successfully recaptured Jerusalem, cleansed it, and reconsecrated the temple. According to tradition, when the lampstands of the sanctuary were relit, only enough holy olive oil for 1 day was found, but this oil miraculously burned for 8 days until new oil was prepared. This event became the origin of Hanukkah, a festival celebrated for 8 days starting on the 25th of Kislev. Although the temple had been recaptured, the fighting continued. In 160 BC, at the Battle of Elazar, Maccabees of Judah was defeated and killed by the Seleucid general Bacchides. Jonathan, Judah's brother, succeeded him, leading the Jews from 160 to 142 BC. Jonathan exploited the internal power struggles within the Seleucid Empire to gradually strengthen the Jewish position, even being appointed high priest. After Jonathan's death, Simon, the last son of Mattathias, succeeded him, leading the Jews from 142 to 134 BC. In 142 BC, Simon successfully destroyed the fortress of Acra in Jerusalem, the last Seleucid stronghold in Judah, marking the beginning of the Jews' actual independence. After Simon's assassination, his son John Hyrcanus I succeeded him, ruling from 134 to 104 BC. In 129 BC, following the decline of the Seleucid dynasty, he established Judah's de facto independence and minted Jewish coins for the first time. He expanded his territory, conquering Transjordan around 110 BC, besieging and capturing Mediaba, invading Samaria, destroying Shechem, and destroying the Sumerian temple on Mount Gerizim between 111 and 110 BC, conquering Idumea and forcing the Idumeans to convert to Judaism. Hyrcanus' son, Aristobulus I, ruled from 104 to 103 BC and was the first Hasmonean ruler to officially use the title of king, combining the high priesthood with royal power, conquering and forcibly Judaizing Galilee. Alexander Jannaeus reigned from 103 to 76 BC, marking the culmination of the Hasmonean dynasty's territorial expansion. He conquered the coastal plains, western Transjordan, and northern Negev, destroying the city of Pera because its inhabitants refused to convert to Judaism. However, the Hasmonean rulers favored the Sadducees, which angered the Pharisees. The Pharisees advocated universal holiness, threatening the hereditary authority of the priestly nobility. During Jannaeus' reign, the conflict with the Pharisees escalated into a civil war. Jannaeus' cruel rule and misconduct as high priest, including the alleged pouring of water on the altar instead of offering wine during Sukkot, sparked a popular uprising. The Jewish Civil War resulted in the deaths of approximately 50,000 Jews. After quelling the rebellion, Jannaeus crucified 800 rebels and murdered their wives and children in their presence, then feasted in the aftermath, as recorded in Book 13, Section 380 of Josephus' Ancient Jewish History. This abuse of political power and cruelty thoroughly exposed the moral depravity of the temple ruling class, becoming the direct reason why Jewish sects such as the Essenes sought complete separation from the Jerusalem temple. On his deathbed, Jannaeus instructed his wife to cooperate with the Pharisees. His wife, Salome Alexandra, ruled from 76 to 67 BC, separating the priestly office from secular power for the first time. She appointed her eldest son, Hyrcanus II, as high priest and her second son, Aristobulus II, as commander-in-chief of the army, supporting the Pharisees and allowing them to persecute the Sadducees. Her reign was relatively peaceful and prosperous, and the country recovered from war. However, after Salome's death, in 67 BC, her two sons clashed over the throne. Hyrcanus II was weaker and received support from the Edomite nobles Antipater and Aretas III, king of Nabateans. Aristobulus II was stronger and forced his brother to abdicate. While the brothers were engaged in civil war, the Roman general Pompey was fighting in the eastern Mediterranean. After defeating Mithridates VI, king of Pontus, Pompey conquered the Seleucid kingdom, making it the Roman province of Syria. 3 Jewish delegations appeared before Pompey, a representative sent by Aristobulus, a representative sent by Hyrcanus, and a representative sent by the people, demanding the abolition of the Hasmonean dynasty and the restoration of priestly rule instead of monarchical rule. Pompey finally invaded Judah in 63 BC, besieging and capturing Jerusalem. The temple was desecrated, and Pompey entered the Holy of Holies, a great blasphemy for the Jews, as only the high priest was allowed to enter, and only on Yom Kippur. Aristobulus was captured and taken to Rome. Hyrcanus was appointed ethnarch, a rank below king. Judah lost its independence and became a vassal state of the Roman Republic. Pompey's conquest ended the independence of the Hasmonean kingdom and ushered in nearly 2,000 years of sovereign rule in Jewish history. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds, tie them as symbols on your hands, and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. Deuteronomy 11 verses 18 to 21. From this history, we see how God continues to work amidst human political strife and cultural conflict. From the tolerance of Persia to the persecution of Greece, from the courage of the Maccabees to the corruption of Hasmones, and then to the Roman conquest, each stage prepares for the fulfillment of God's plan of salvation. This passage in Deuteronomy reminds us that no matter how external circumstances change, God's word is always our foundation. In the process of losing the temple, the Ark of the Covenant, and their independence, the Jews gradually learned to keep God's word in their hearts, which became the key to their survival during their diaspora. Let us also emulate this spirit, keeping God's word in our hearts in this challenging era, teaching the next generation so that we may stand firm no matter what situation we face, for our hope is not in earthly governments, but in God who reigns over history and never changes. If you'd like to learn more about today's news or other content, please leave a comment below. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share to support this channel and help it continue. You can also visit my Patreon page to learn more. Let's get to know God, reflect on our faith, and live out Christ together.